6 words, the dinner table. The story of what happens when you read the message out loud. There are moments that divide your life into before and after. Mine took about 12 seconds. I read 6 words out loud at a dinner table and nothing was the same when I finished. Part 1, Before March. Diana and I met at a data analytics conference in Seattle 7 years ago. She was presenting. I was in the 3rd row of a breakout session that I had walked into by accident. My original session was in the wrong building, and I had 17 minutes to fill, and the door was open. She was explaining a supply chain optimization model to approximately 40 people who were paying the specific attention that people pay when they are watching someone do something they do not fully understand, but can tell is being done well. I stayed for the full 40 minutes, and afterward introduced myself with a question about one of her methodology choices that I genuinely wanted to ask. She answered it, then asked one back. We talked until the next session started and exchanged cards in the hallway. We were in the same city. Within 6 months, we had merged our weekends. Within a year, our leases. 3 years after the conference, our daughter Iris came along and we found ourselves in the specific joint project of early parenthood demanding exhausting. The kind of thing that either binds people together or surfaces every incompatibility they have been managing around. It bound us together. We were good at it jointly. Diana was methodical and calm and had the specific patience of someone who had worked in environments that required precision under pressure. I was more improvised, but could run on less sleep and had a higher threshold for the chaos a toddler produces. We complemented each other without needing to discuss it. The house was in Eastlake. We had renovated the kitchen in year 4 because the original layout was wrong for how we actually cooked, a decision that took 3 months of planning and 6 weeks of living with construction, and that produced a space we both used more than we had used the original. The back deck looked toward the water on clear days. We had eaten dinner out there most summer evenings since we moved in. I want to tell you this clearly because I think the before matters for the after to make any sense. What we had was real. 7 years, a daughter, a house, a kitchen we designed together. Real choices made over time by 2 people who were trying to build something worth building. The things that changed in March were not invented, but the things before March were also real. I need you to hold both. Part 2, March. My name is Nathan Cole. I run a logistics optimization firm, 12 people South Lake Union office routing and inventory systems for regional distributors. I work from a home office 3 days a week. The work is detail-oriented, and I am good at it in the specific way of someone who has been doing precise work long enough to trust the precision. Diana is a senior operations manager at a mid-sized supply chain company in the Eastlake corridor. Cross-functional teams, high-pressure timelines, the kind of work that requires reading rooms quickly and finding the path through competing agendas. She is excellent at it. I have watched her work at firm events and been genuinely proud of what she does in a room. In March, she was assigned to a new cross-functional project, larger scope. New team members, longer hours, which she told me about in advance and which I understood. What changed in March alongside the hours was smaller and harder to name. Her phone changed. Not dramatically, not the face down at all times behavior that reads as obvious. Subtler. The specific angle of the screen when reading a message. The fraction of a second between notification sound and the movement of her hand that told me the movement had become reflexive. The bathroom habit phone taken in when she got up at night, which she had not done before. I track patterns for a living. I noticed the pattern without wanting to have noticed it, and spent 2 weeks telling myself there were other explanations. Work stress, new project dynamics, the specific privacy some people develop when managing something difficult professionally. Then the Tuesday in late March. Diana had been gone since 7 in the morning. Iris was at my parents' house for the night. I was finishing a routing analysis when my phone buzzed and I messaged Diana's name. Diana had sent it to someone in her contacts whose name I did not recognize. The message had been delivered to my phone because 8 months earlier, when we set up Iris's iPad with Diana's Apple ID for FaceTime access to grandparents, I had enabled a message relay that I had since forgotten about. The relay was still active. Her messages were coming to my phone silently. The message was 7 words. Last night was everything. Same time Thursday. The name in her contacts was Ryan Caldwell. I set my phone face down on the desk. I looked at the routing analysis for approximately 5 minutes without seeing any of it. Then I picked up the phone and started working. Part 3. 4 days. I am going to describe the 4 days precisely because precision is the only form of honesty available to me here. Day 1. I didn't sleep. At 3 in the morning, I searched Ryan Caldwell on LinkedIn. 37, senior project manager at Diana's company, 14 months with the firm. Added to Diana's company network 11 months ago, listed as cross-functional team member on a project Diana had mentioned in February. His profile activity had gone quiet in early February, which was when the phone behavior started. Day 2. Messages continued coming silently. 4 from Ryan, 3 replies from Diana. I read all of them. The content was specific and unmistakable. One message Tuesday afternoon, a photo. Hotel keycard on a white bedside table. Caption, keeping this. For Thursday. Diana's reply 3 minutes later, Thursday. The hotel was visible in the corner of the sleeve. The Meridian. A boutique property 40 minutes south on I-5. I created a locked folder. Everything went in. Day 3. I drove to Eastlake and sat in a coffee shop parking lot for 40 minutes, not going in. I was doing what I do with logistics problems, mapping dependencies before touching anything. What were the variables I controlled? What was the sequence that produced the outcome I needed? The outcome I needed was not revenge. I want to be clear about this. The outcome I needed was documentation clarity and the ability to make decisions from accurate information. I also needed to stop carrying it alone. 3 days of carrying it, and it was the heaviest thing I had held. I also did one other thing on day 3. I found a furnished 2-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill on a month-to-month lease and put down a deposit, just in case. Day 4. Diana reminded me about the dinner. Our friends Marcus and Priya were hosting their spring gathering, 6 couples, their dining room, an annual event we had attended 3 years running. Or Sry. She said it casually while making coffee. I said I'd be there. I had already made a decision. If she was going to make me invisible in our own home, she could be visible somewhere public. That evening, getting dressed, I caught myself in the bathroom mirror, phone full of screenshots, jaw tight for 4 days. A man looking at himself in the way you look at yourself when you're not sure what you see anymore. I adjusted my collar, went to the car. Part 4. The dinner. Marcus and Priya live in a craftsman house in Fremont. Their dining room holds 8, comfortably 10, with the leaf in the table. Tonight it held 12 6-couples wine, already open bread on the board, the specific warm noise of a gathering that has been doing this long enough to have its own rhythm. Diana and I arrived together. She greeted everyone with the ease she always brought, warm, specific, remembering details from previous conversations. She and Priya embraced. She asked after someone's father who had been ill. This is who she is in a room. It is still who she is. I have never confused the affair with her character. We sat. First course. Conversation about someone's renovation, someone's job, changed the usual spring check-in of a group that has been meeting annually long enough to have a sense of collective time. Diana was across from me, and 2 seats to the right next to Priya. I was between Marcus and our friend Javi, who has the specific gift of making anyone feel like the most interesting person at the table. Around the second course, Diana's phone buzzed in her purse. She reached for it without looking at the table, a movement that had become reflexive enough to happen without visible decision. She read something, typed back, put the phone away. Then Priya said something that made Diana laugh, and Diana looked at Marcus and said casually, warmly, the way you say something you believe to be benign. "Don't mind Nathan. He's been watching my phone all month. He thinks I'm having an affair." She laughed as she said it, not cruelly the way you laugh when you are telling a story about your husband's quirk. Priya laughed. Marcus laughed. Javi made a face that was part sympathy and part amusement. Someone at the far end of the table said something about jealousy. The table was laughing, and Diana was shaking her head with the fond exasperation of a wife whose husband worries too much. I let it finish. I waited until the laughter had run its course and the table had settled back into the warm noise of dinner. Then I reached into my jacket pocket. Part 5, 6 words. I want to describe this carefully because how it happened matters more than the fact of it. I did not stand up. I did not raise my voice. I did not make a speech. I took my phone out of my pocket, opened the locked folder, scrolled to the screenshot I had chosen, and read what was on the screen in the same register I would use to read a work document. The message was from Ryan Caldwell. Sent Wednesday at 11:47 p.m. 6 words. Can't stop thinking about Thursday. 11:47 p.m. I put the phone on the table. The room went quiet, the way routing errors resolve when you isolate the wrong variable, a spreading stillness moving from the people nearest to me outward. Priya stopped mid-sentence. Marcus set down his wine glass. Javi looked at me, then at Diana, then at the table. Diana's face. I have thought about her face in that moment more than anything else from that evening. It did not go from confident to caught in a single second. It went through something more complicated, first the recalibration, then the specific expression of a person running very fast through available options and finding none of them adequate. She said Nathan. One word. My name. The inflection of someone who needs a few more seconds. I picked up my phone and put it back in my jacket. There are 43 more, I said. I can keep going. She reached across the table. I moved the phone. She pulled her hand back. Can we please do this somewhere else? She said, voice low. You did it in public first, I said. 2 minutes ago. Marcus said something I did not hear. Priya had left the table. I heard her footsteps in the hallway. Javi was looking at his plate with the focus of a man who has decided the best contribution he can make is the appearance of not being in the situation. I stood up. He's married, I said. 2 kids. His wife is going to receive the same screenshots tonight. Diana's face changed again. Said, Diana's. The recalculation, not just me, not just this table, but the full extent of the exposure. Nathan, please. Priya's risotto was excellent, I said. Tell her for me. I picked up my keys and walked to the front door. Part 6. The logistics of leaving. Diana always wanted her own car at evening events. I had never thought twice about it. Standing in Marcus and Priya's driveway, I understood for the first time why she always wanted her own way out. The drive home was 41 minutes. I looked at the timestamp when I pulled into the garage, 9:17. I went to Iris's room first. She was at my parents' house tonight. The room was quiet, her stuffed animals arranged in the order. She maintained a hierarchy of importance that only she fully understood. I stood in the doorway. I had taken 3 photos of her room 2 days earlier without knowing exactly why. I went to our bedroom. I packed methodically, the logistics instinct applied to an unfamiliar task. Clothes for 2 weeks, toiletries, laptop and charger, 2 of Iris's books from the shelf, her rabbit, her purple blanket. I texted my brother Carl. Can you come over? He replied in 4 minutes. On my way. Carl arrived in 18 minutes. He is 2 years older, runs a construction management company, has been married 11 years, and has the specific economy of speech of someone who knows that most difficult situations require action rather than commentary. He walked in, looked at the bags, looked at me. Truck's outside, he said. It's not that much, I said. Still, he said. We loaded the car in 11 minutes. Carl did not ask questions. He carried things. He checked that I had the apartment keys. He said, "You eat anything today?" I had not eaten since noon. We drove to a taco place on East Lake. Carl ordered for both of us without asking and paid before I could reach for my wallet. The food came and we ate most of it without talking, and I drank a large water, and Carl drank a coffee, and the restaurant was doing its late-night business around us, other people having ordinary evenings. On the drive to Capitol Hill, Carl said, "She know you're gone yet?" "She's still at Marcus and Priya's," I said. "She call?" "Not yet." He nodded. We drove the rest of the way without talking, which was right. The apartment was on the 4th floor of a building 2 blocks from Volunteer Park. Clean, furnished, anonymous, in the specific way of month-to-month apartments, everything chosen for neutral utility. 2 bedrooms, 1 window in the living room that looked toward the park. I set Iris's rabbit on the pillow in the smaller bedroom. I stood in the doorway of that room for a while. Carl stood beside me. He looked at the rabbit. "She'll be okay," he said. "I know," I said. "You will be too," he said. "I know that too." He helped me carry the bags up and then went home because it was past midnight, and he had a site inspection at 7. I sat on the floor of the empty living room with my back against the couch and opened my laptop. I found Rebecca Caldwell on LinkedIn, Ryan's wife, 41 marketing director in Redmond, professional photo the kind where someone has dressed carefully and smiled warmly and looks like someone you would trust. I put together a short message. No drama, 3 screenshots, and 1 sentence. "I thought you should know. I'm sorry, this is how you're finding out." She read it at 12:43 a.m. She replied at 12:51. "I had a feeling. Thank you for telling me." 8 words. The specific economy of someone who has been waiting for confirmation of something they already suspected. I closed the laptop. I sat in the empty apartment with the park outside the window and let the evening be what it was. Part 7, the morning. Diana called 11 times before 8. I watched the screen light up each time. At 8:14, the calls stopped and texting began. I read the texts clinically, looking for actual content underneath the performance of content. "We need to talk, please. I love you. Please call me. Nathan, it's not what you think. Where is Iris?" I responded to only the 4th. Iris was with my parents. I would pick her up at 10. Her attorney should contact mine about arrangements. At 10, I drove to Bellevue. My mother opened the door with the expression of someone who has heard a partial version and is reserving judgment. My father was in the backyard with Iris pushing her on the swing they had installed when she was 18 months old and never taken down. She was laughing at something. The full-body laugh of a 5-year-old who finds swings genuinely exciting every time. I stood at the kitchen window before going out. My mother said, "She doesn't know anything. We told her Daddy had to work late." "Thank you," I said. "Are you all right?" "I will be." Iris saw me through the back door before I could open it. She jumped off the swing mid-motion and ran across the yard at full speed and hit me somewhere around the kneecaps, and I picked her up and she said, "Daddy, you smell like a different house." "I was at a different house last night," I said. "You want to see my new place? Does it have a playground?" "There's a park 2 blocks away." She considered this with the seriousness of a 5-year-old evaluating a proposal. Then, "Okay." I buckled her into the car seat. She looked at my parents' house as we pulled out and said, "Are we coming back?" "Of course," I said. "Grandma and Grandpa live there." "Okay," she said, and looked out the window. The apartment had bare walls and anonymous furniture. Iris went directly to the window and pressed her nose against the glass and looked at the street below. "There's a dog," she said. "Yeah, a big one, brown. We'll go see it later." She turned from the window and looked at the apartment with the assessing gaze of a 5-year-old making an evaluation. "Where's my room?" I showed her. The rabbit was on the pillow. She picked it up, hugged it, put it back. "It needs more stuff." "What do you need first?" She thought about it. "Purple. The walls should be purple." "I'll see what I can do." She accepted this and went back to the window. That was enough for the first morning. Part 8, Ryan Caldwell. Ryan Caldwell was a project manager who was good at his job, married 2 kids. He had met Diana on a cross-functional team in February and had been conducting an affair with her since approximately the 2nd week of their working together. What I learned in the weeks after the dinner was who he actually was when consequence arrived. He blocked Diana's number within 48 hours. He blocked her email. He had by the following Monday requested a transfer to a different team and made contact with a recruiter at another company. He was not having a crisis of conscience. He was in damage control. Diana found this out before I did. She had been trying to reach him and could not, and had understood with the specific clarity that arrives when someone's phone goes dark that the person she had been risking everything for had made his calculation. She came to the Capitol Hill apartment on a Friday evening. I heard the buzzer at 7:04. I watched her on the camera standing at the building entrance in the cold hair, Pushed by the wind jacket half-zipped, I watched for a moment before buzzing her in. She came upstairs. Iris was with my parents for the weekend. She stood in the doorway. She looked at the space, the bare walls, the window toward the park, the rabbit on the couch where Iris had left it. "He blocked me," she said. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "Can we talk?" The first thing she said, standing in the doorway of the apartment I was living in because of what she had done, was information about Ryan Caldwell. I looked at her. "That's my problem. How?" I said. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. "I know I don't have the right to ask for anything," she said. "Correct." "I don't know how it got to this." And she said, "I know exactly how it got to this," I said. "March through June, Tuesdays and Thursdays, the Meridian on I-5. 43 messages I have on screenshots. That's how." She looked at the floor. "What do you need from me?" she said. "My lawyer will be in touch about Iris. Beyond that, nothing." She stood in the doorway for another moment, then turned and walked down the hallway. I closed the door, stood in the apartment with the park outside the window and the rabbit on the couch, and the quiet of a space that was not yet home and would become one. Part 9, the filing and after. I had retained Patricia Walsh on Thursday of the documentation week. She was direct and specific and had the useful quality of someone who deals in facts rather than in the performance of sympathy. I gave her the locked folder, and she called me 3 days later and told me it was clean documentation, complete, time-stamped clear. I filed Monday. Diana received the papers Wednesday by certified delivery. Her attorney called Patricia that afternoon. The conversation lasted 23 minutes. Patricia's summary: Diana was not contesting the documentation. The message logs were clear. The conversation would be about Iris and the house and the savings. The mediation was 14 days later, 47 minutes in a conference room. Diana and I sat across from each other for the first time since the dinner. She looked like she hadn't slept consistently in 10 days. The terms moved efficiently. Joint custody alternating weeks, the house to Diana, who had contributed more to the down payment savings divided on an agreed formula. Iris's school arrangements unchanged. I agreed to everything fair and pushed back on one term that wasn't. The mediator adjusted it. We signed. On the way out, Diana stopped me in the hallway, her hand briefly on my arm. "I never meant for it to become this," she said. I looked at her. 7 years. Iris. The kitchen renovation. The back deck with the water view. The analytics conference where I walked into the wrong session and stayed 40 minutes because she was doing something I didn't understand but could tell was being done well. "I know you didn't," I said. "That doesn't change what it became." She nodded. Her hand left my arm. I walked through the lobby and into the Seattle afternoon. Part 10, Rebecca Caldwell. Rebecca Caldwell posted on Instagram 3 weeks after the dinner. Carl texted me a description before I could see it myself. A moving truck outside a house in Redmond. 2 children in car seats facing away from the camera. Caption: New chapter, starting Tuesday. She had not left quietly. Carl's wife Simone, who worked in tech, heard the rest. Rebecca had filed an HR complaint with Ryan's company, citing a relationship with a direct team member in a professional oversight capacity. The complaint created sufficient pressure that Ryan was already in conversations with the recruiter he had contacted the week after the dinner. He was not leaving because he had learned anything. He was leaving because the ground was moving. Carl called to tell me this on a Sunday morning. "Thought you should know," he said. "Thanks," I said. "How are you doing with it?" "Same," I said. "Same as what?" "Same as 4 days before the dinner. Nothing's changed. This is just the part where the administration finishes." Carl was quiet. Then, "You know that's not healthy." "What isn't?" "Treating everything like a logistics problem." I thought about this. Iris was asleep in her room. The purple walls were done. Carl had helped me paint them the previous Saturday, a morning of drop cloths, and Iris supervising from the doorway, telling us when we missed spots. "Tell me how it should be treated," I said. "With more room for the part where it was real," he said. I sat with that. 7 years is real, I said. Iris is real. The kitchen renovation is real. What Diana did is also real. I'm holding all of it. There's a difference between holding it and letting yourself feel it, Carl said. I cried. I said, first night in the apartment before you got there, when I was packing Iris's rabbit. Is that what you mean? Yeah, he said. That's what I mean. I'm holding that too. I said, I'm just not doing it on the phone. Fair, he said. You want to grab lunch? We did. Sushi place in Capitol Hill. We ate and talked about his site inspection and Iris's daycare preferences and whether the Mariners had any chance this year. The food was good and the afternoon was ordinary, and ordinary was the most necessary thing. Part 11, Diana's version. I want to give you Diana's version because the story is incomplete without it. I know the parts. I know from two places what Diana told me in one direct conversation after the mediation and what I assembled from the message patterns over 4 days. Diana did not go looking for it. I believe this. What happened had the logic of accumulation rather than intention. Two people working closely on a high-pressure project, one of them very good at reading what someone needs in a difficult room, the other feeling seen in a way that had become less available at home. I want to be fair here because fairness is the only thing that's actually useful. I had not been absent. I had not been cruel. What I had been in the year before March was preoccupied. The business had expanded a new contract that doubled our client load and required a sustained level of attention that left less available for everything else. I had been present in the house and somewhere else in my attention, and Diana had felt the gap. She had not told me about the gap. This is the thing I have sat with most in the months since not the affair, which is a fact and a hurt I have processed and am continuing to process. What I have sat with most is whether she would have told me if I had given her a different opening, whether if I had asked the right question in December or January or February. The answer would have been something we could have worked with rather than something I would find on an iPad in March. I don't know. I have decided that the question is not one I can answer from where I'm standing, and that the not answering is not the same as not asking. In the phone call after the mediation about Iris's school pickup schedule, Diana said, I know I don't get to tell you this, but what I had with Ryan was nothing. It was noise. I didn't understand that until it was over, and then it was too late. I listened. I believe you. I said, that doesn't change the decision. I know, she said. The decision was made before the dinner. The dinner was what happened when I was done carrying it alone. She was quiet for a moment. You carried it for 4 days, she said. Yes. Were they very bad? I thought about the nights, the routing analysis I couldn't see, the parking lot in Eastlake, packing Iris's rabbit. They were the kind of days where you find out who you are in the situation. I said, I found out. I'm okay with what I found. Is there anything? Diana. Yeah. Pick her up at 3:30. She likes it when you're early. A pause, then something that might have been a laugh. I will, she said. Good, I said, and ended the call. Part 12, What Was Built. The apartment on Capitol Hill is no longer anonymous. Iris's drawings are on the refrigerator and on a section of the living room wall she designated as her gallery, taped with low adhesive painter's tape so she can rotate them, which she does with the curatorial seriousness of someone who has opinions about what should be displayed. Her room has the purple walls and the rabbit and 3 shelves of books arranged by a system that shifts every few weeks as her preferences change. The window in the smaller bedroom faces the park, and she likes to look out of it in the mornings before we leave for daycare. I make coffee in the kitchen most mornings before she wakes up. The kitchen window catches early light and makes the space look better than it is. I have done the first hour of work in this light enough times that it has become the shape of my mornings. Carl comes over on Sundays when Iris is at Diana's. My parents drove over from Bellevue last month, and we had dinner at the restaurant 2 blocks away. My mother looked at the apartment afterward and said, You've made it yours. Iris helped, I said. The purple walls, my mother said. Her condition, I said. Marcus texted 3 weeks after the dinner to say he was sorry for laughing before he understood. I told him there was nothing to apologize for and asked if he wanted coffee. We have had coffee twice. We will continue to have it. Priya sent a card. 3 handwritten sentences, sorry for the part her home played in a difficult evening. Thinking of Iris, hoped I was doing okay. I wrote back that I was and that her risotto had been excellent, and that I hoped we would still be friends when the distance became manageable. She replied, definitely. Rebecca Caldwell. I do not know her. We have not been in contact since her DM reply. I saw the Instagram post from Carl. I think about her occasionally the way you think about someone who was in the same water without being in the same boat. I hope Chapter 2 is good. I believe it will be. Ryan Caldwell has joined a company in Portland. I encountered this on LinkedIn without looking for it. I looked at his new profile for approximately 15 seconds and then navigated away. Diana is in the house in Eastlake. She has Iris alternating weeks. From what Iris reports and what I observe at pickups and drop-offs, she is present and careful and trying. Change is ongoing. I am watching it from the appropriate distance. Part 13, what Iris drew. Iris drew a picture in October that is at the center of her gallery on the refrigerator. It is a building with 4 windows on the 4th floor. One window is bright yellow, the window she likes because it catches the morning light. There is a figure in the yellow window, which she told me was Daddy. There is a figure on the sidewalk below, which she told me was Mia from daycare. In the lower right corner, a small brown dog. I asked her about the dog. It's the dog from the first morning, she said. The brown one on the sidewalk. You remember that dog, I said. I remember everything, she said, with the specific confidence of a 5-year-old who has not yet had reason to doubt this. She went back to whatever she was drawing next. I looked at the picture on the refrigerator, the yellow window, the figure in it, the small brown dog in the corner. She had drawn the first morning of the new life from memory and put it at the center of the gallery. That is, I think, the whole thing. The before and the after and the space between them. 4 days of documentation and 6 words and a drive across the city and a rabbit on a pillow in a room that needed purple walls. I read it out loud at the dinner table and the room went quiet in layers and nothing was the same when I finished. What came after was hard and real and mine. Iris drew it. It is on the refrigerator held with the magnets my father brought from Bellevue. That is enough. That is, as it turns out, everything. The end. Cast of characters. Nathan Cole, Logistics Optimization. 12 employees. 4 days of documentation and 6 words. Is learning the difference between quiet and lonely. Makes good coffee. Diana, Senior Operations Manager. 7 years, a marriage, a kitchen they designed together. Joint custody alternating weeks. Picks Iris up early because Iris likes that. Iris 5. Opinions about wall colors. Draws the people she is thinking about. Remembers everything. Has a rabbit whose importance in the family hierarchy is not in question. Ryan Caldwell, Senior Project Manager, blocked Diana's number 48 hours after the dinner. Now in Portland. Rebecca Caldwell, Marketing Director, Redmond. Had a feeling. Started Chapter 2. The brown dog is not hers, but she is welcome to it. Carl Nathan's brother, Construction Management. 18 minutes, no questions. Painted purple walls. Ordered tacos without asking. Come Sundays. Right about most things. Patricia Walsh, Attorney. Direct. Specific. Called the documentation clean. Marcus and Priya hosted the dinner. Still friends. Mac and cheese. Still excellent. The brown dog, first morning. Sidewalk. In the drawing now. Part 14, the wait of 4 days. I want to tell you what the 4 days actually felt like because I described what I did and not what it was like to do it. And I think the difference matters. The first night after I found the message on my phone, I finished the routing analysis. All of it. Every data point, every variance check, every client recommendation. I worked until 2 in the morning, and the analysis was the most complete work I had done in months. Because when your mind is trying to process something, it cannot fully process. It will sometimes route that energy into whatever other task is in front of it. I have thought about this since, about the specific way that grief and I am calling it grief now, which I did not have the vocabulary for, then will look for somewhere to go when you won't let it go where it needs to go. I routed it into the routing analysis. This was not adaptive exactly. It was what I had available. The second night, I did not sleep and did not work. I lay on my side of the bed, our bed, the one we had bought together in year 2, the one Diana had strong opinions about in terms of mattress firmness, and I thought about the specific details of 7 years with the precision I applied to logistics data. I was not doing this to torture myself. I was doing it because I did not want to not know what I had had before I made any decisions about what to do with what I had. I thought about the conference where we met, the question I asked about her methodology, the way she answered it and then asked one back, the exchange of cards in the hallway, the 6 months of phone calls and then weekends and then leases, the kitchen renovation, the night Iris was born, which was also the first time I had ever seen Diana cry not sad tears. The specific overwhelmed tears of someone whose life has just become something different from what it was before and who knows it, and for whom the knowing is the whole feeling. I thought about all of this from my side of the bed with the information in my phone and the woman who had generated both things asleep beside me. The third night, which was the night after the hotel keycard photo, after the locked folder, after the parking lot, I sat at the kitchen table where we had eaten dinner most nights for 4 years, and I acknowledged to myself that the decision was already made. That the previous 2 nights of documentation had not been gathering information to evaluate. They had been gathering information to support a decision I had already made the first time I read the 7-word message. I sat with this for a while. I wanted to be honest with myself about it. The decision had been made before the folder was complete, and before I found the apartment, and before I chose the dinner as the venue for what I had decided to do. The documentation was real, and the decision was right, but the sequence was decision, then evidence, not evidence, then decision. I want to be accurate about this. The 4th day I got dressed. I adjusted my collar. I went to the car. Part 15. What the dinner table taught me. I have been asked by Carl and by my parents and by Javi, who called 3 weeks after the dinner, whether reading the message at Marcus and Priya's was the right choice. I have thought about this carefully because I think it deserves a careful answer. The right choice in the abstract would have been a private conversation in which I told Diana what I knew, and we addressed it without involving our friends. This is the version that would have been less painful for her and less uncomfortable for Marcus and Priya, and less complicated for our ongoing friendships and Iris's daycare community and all of the social infrastructure that is built around a marriage, and that requires careful management when a marriage ends. I did not make that choice. I made the choice I made because of one specific thing, which is that Diana had laughed at me. Not cruelly as I said, but publicly and in a way that communicated to everyone at that table that her husband's concern was excessive and unfounded. She had made me invisible in the specific way that a person is made invisible when someone they trust uses them as a punchline. I had been invisible for 4 days by choice, carrying the documentation, making the arrangements. That was my choice, and I would make it again. Being made invisible at someone else's table in front of people I respected, that was not a choice I was willing to accept. This is the honest answer to whether the dinner table was right. I do not know if it was right in the abstract. It was what I did. And the reason I did it was the laugh, and I believe the reason was a legitimate one. What I know for certain is what it produced, which was the end of pretending. For Diana, for me, and for everyone at that table who would have continued in the comfortable position of not knowing if the evening had ended differently. Javi called me 3 weeks later. Boy, he apologized for laughing before he understood. I told him there was nothing to apologize for. He said, "How did you know the right moment?" I thought about this for a while. Then I said, "She told me. She said he sees threats everywhere," and the table laughed. And I thought, yes, exactly. I see exactly what's everywhere. Javi was quiet for a moment. "That's a very precise answer," he said. "I work in logistics," I said. He asked if I wanted to grab a beer sometime. I said yes, and meant it. Part 16, the apartment becomes home. In November, Carl brought a bookshelf kit he had found at a hardware store. and the two of us assembled it on a Saturday afternoon in Iris's room while she narrated the process with the authoritative commentary of someone who has opinions about where things should go and is not shy about communicating them. The bookshelf took 2 hours. We put it against the wall that got the afternoon light, which Iris had specified as the requirement. She arranged her books on it with the specific focused attention of someone who understands that a bookshelf is a statement about what you value and who you are. When she was done, she stood back and looked at it. "It needs one more thing," she said. "What?" Carl said. "A plant," she said. "Plants need water," Carl said. "I know how to water things," Iris said, with the tone of someone who finds this objection insufficient. We got her a small succulent the following weekend. It has been on the bookshelf for 2 months, and Iris waters it on Tuesdays, which she has decided is the correct watering day, and it is still alive, which is evidence that she was right about her capacity for plant care. The apartment has accumulated in the way that spaces accumulate when they are being genuinely lived in. A coat rack by the door that Carl installed one evening when he noticed we were leaving jackets on the kitchen chairs. A rug that Iris chose from a website purple with a yellow border, which is on her floor and which she takes off her shoes to walk on because she has decided it is special. A coffee maker that works better than the one I brought from the house in Eastlake. I have started cooking again. Not elaborate cooking. The logistics of feeding a 5-year-old do not call for elaborate, but real cooking with the kitchen being used in the evenings, the way kitchens are meant to be used. Iris helps when she is here, which means she hands me things and occasionally drops them and always wants to taste what is being prepared at every stage. This slows things down considerably, and I have stopped noticing that it slows things down. My parents come over once a month. We have dinner at the kitchen counter because the table is usually covered in Iris's drawings. This does not bother anyone. The drawings are by general consensus the most important things in the apartment. Part 17, the one question. There is a question I have not answered and that I want to answer here because the story is incomplete without it. Diana asked me in the phone call after the mediation whether the 4 days were very bad. I said they were the days where I found out who I was in the situation. I said I was okay with what I found. Both of these things are true, but they are not the complete answer to the question. The complete answer is this. The first night was bad in the way that finding out the truth is bad when the truth is something you had suspected and had chosen until that moment not to fully verify. The specific quality of confirmation, the 7-word message, the knowledge that what I had been telling myself was other explanations, was not other explanations landed with a weight that I had not anticipated. I had thought, logically, that having the confirmation would be better than the suspicion. It was not better. It was more accurate. The second night was worse, not because of what I learned the documentation was already sufficient, but because of what I understood. 7 years. The conference. The kitchen renovation. Iris being born. All of it real, and all of it still real, and all of it existing simultaneously with the locked folder on my phone. The specific difficulty of grief that has no clean address. Not grief for a person who is gone, but grief for a version of a relationship that had existed and that the relationship's other party had apparently been done with before I knew it. The third night was the worst. Not because of new information, there was no new information. Because of what I did, which was sit at the kitchen table we had eaten at for 4 years and acknowledge that the decision was already made. That I had made it on the first night, in the first hour. When the message was still on my phone and the routing analysis was on my screen, and I was 41 years old with a 5-year-old daughter and a marriage that had just told me what it actually was. The decision was right. I believe this. The 3 nights were still the 3 nights. I packed Iris's rabbit on the 4th day. I stood in the doorway of her room and looked at the stuffed animals arranged in their hierarchy of importance. And I took the rabbit because she would need it. And I would need to see it on the pillow of the room I was going to put together for her in a place she had not yet seen. That was the moment I cried, standing in the doorway of my daughter's room in the house I was leaving with her rabbit in my hand. Carl arrived 18 minutes after I texted him. He did not ask why I had been crying. He carried boxes. This is what the 4 days were. I am okay with what I found. The finding was still the finding. Both things are true. Part 18, Friday mornings. On the Friday mornings when Iris is with me, our departure for daycare has a specific rhythm that has developed over 4 months, and that I value the way I value any system that has been tested and works. She wakes up at 6:30, which is earlier than I need, but which I have stopped fighting because she wakes up in the specific mood of someone who is glad to be awake and who wants to share this gladness with whoever is available. I am available. We eat breakfast together at the kitchen counter. She tells me about whatever she's thinking about, which ranges from the plot of a book she is reading to a question about why dogs have 4 legs when 2 would be enough, to an observation about what the building across the street looks like in different weather. I answer her questions when I can and tell her I don't know when I can't, and she accepts both responses with equal equanimity. Then we get her backpack and her jacket, and I check that the rabbit is in the small pocket of the backpack where she keeps it on daycare days, and we go down to the car and I drive her the 3 blocks to daycare, which she tells me we should walk, but which I continue to drive because Seattle in November is not a walking kind of place. At the daycare door, she turns and looks at me with the expression of someone who is mentally transitioning from one context to another and has a few more seconds in the first one. "See you at pickup," she says. 3:30, I say. Or early, she says. Early is good. Early is good, I say. She turns and goes through the doors. I watch her go. The purple jacket. The backpack with the small pocket. The door swinging shut behind her. I pull out of the lot and merge onto the main road and turn the radio on. Whatever is playing, I let it play. This is a Friday morning. This is the shape of things now. It is not what it was before March. It is what it is after March. Both are true and both are mine, and the second one has a bookshelf with a succulent and purple walls and a small brown dog in a drawing on the refrigerator and a rabbit in a backpack small pocket and a 5-year-old who wakes up glad to be awake. That is the inventory. That is enough. Begin. Part 19, what logistics actually means. Carl said I treat everything like a logistics problem. He was right, and I have been thinking about what he meant and what I mean by it, and I think the distinction is worth making. Logistics is not the absence of feeling. Logistics is the application of sequence and dependency to a problem that has known variables and unknown ones, and requires you to be accurate about which is which before you touch anything. The feeling is present in a logistics problem. The routing analyst is not indifferent to the outcome of the route. What the routing analyst does is separate the feeling from the action, because the action needs to be accurate, and the feeling, if it infiltrates the analysis before the analysis is complete, will produce an inaccurate result. I had feelings during the 4 days. I have described some of them. I did not allow the feelings to infiltrate the documentation because the documentation needed to be accurate. I waited until the documentation was complete before I made the decision about what to do with it, and I made the decision at the kitchen table on the 3rd night with the feelings present but separate. And I acted on the decision at the dinner on the 4th day. This is logistics. This is also, I think, how certain people survive certain things, not by not feeling them, but by not letting the feeling determine the action before the action has been correctly calibrated. Carl is right that this is not healthy as a general life strategy. I agree with him. The second night in bed thinking through 7 years, that was not logistics. That was the feeling being allowed to go where it needed to go. The first morning in the apartment, packing Iris's rabbit, standing in the doorway of her room, that was not logistics. That was the true cost of the decision being acknowledged, in the only way it could be acknowledged, which was privately alone with her rabbit in my hand. I held both, the logistics and the not logistics. I applied each of them where it was needed and kept them separate from each other, where keeping them separate was what the situation required. This is not a virtue exactly. It is a capacity I have developed through the work I do, and it happened to be useful in the specific situation I was in. I am not recommending it as an approach. I am describing it as what I did. What I know is that by the time Iris was running across my parents' backyard and hitting me around the kneecaps and saying, "Daddy, you smell like a different house," I was ready for that morning. I had processed what needed to be processed alone in the apartment in the 3 nights before. I was not carrying the undone work of grief into the morning that belonged to her. She got the morning she deserved. That is what the logistics was for. Part 20, the note Diana left. I found a note in my jacket pocket on the Wednesday after the mediation. I did not know it was there. Diana must have put it in the pocket of my jacket during or after the signing, a moment I was not paying close attention to. I found it when I was looking for my phone in the parking lot, reaching into pockets with the automatic motion of someone checking. A folded piece of paper. Her handwriting, which I recognized the way you recognize things that have been part of your daily life for years before you know them as specific. I stood in the parking lot and read it. 2 sentences. I know you won't believe me, but I loved you the whole time. I'm sorry it wasn't enough. I read it once. I stood in the parking lot for a while after reading it. The city was doing its afternoon things around me. Traffic. A food delivery cyclist going past. 2 people arguing in the outdoor seating of a coffee shop about something I could not hear clearly. Then I folded the note back along its crease, walked to my car, drove to the Capitol Hill apartment, went upstairs. Iris was at Diana's tonight. The apartment was quiet. I stood in the kitchen with the note and looked at the refrigerator where her drawings were, 3 of them, including the one with the building and the yellow window and the small brown dog. I dropped the note into the recycling bin on top of that morning's coffee grounds. It did not feel cruel. It did not feel sad. It felt like the accurate response to the accurate information. She had loved me the whole time. I believe this is true. She had also, for 4 months, been conducting an affair and had laughed at me in front of 6 people while doing it. Both things were true. The note contained one of them. I had the other 43 in a locked folder. The note was in the recycling bin. The folder was on my phone. Both were the truth. Both belonged where they were. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen counter and worked until Iris's bedtime texts started coming through. "Good night, Daddy. I love you." The rabbit says goodnight too, and I replied to each one and then sat in the quiet apartment in the last of the day's light and let the evening be what it was. Part 21, what Elise Lindgren did. I want to finish the story about Rebecca Caldwell. I have been calling her Rebecca because that is the name. I know the one from LinkedIn, the marketing director in Redmond with the professional photo, because I think her story belongs in this one. She received my message at 12:43 a.m. She replied at 12:51 with 8 words. She had a feeling. Thank you. Within 3 weeks, she had left. The moving truck, the 2 kids in car seats, the caption, "New chapter, starting Tuesday." She had also, according to Simone's network information, filed the HR complaint that put sufficient professional pressure on Ryan Caldwell to accelerate his departure from the firm. She did not do this quietly, and she did not do it slowly. She moved in the specific way of someone who has made a decision and is implementing it without the period of documentation and deliberation that I applied to my own situation. Her timeline was shorter. Her methods were different. The outcome was the same. I have thought about her often, not in the way of someone who feels connected to a stranger we have never met and likely never will, but in the way of someone who was in adjacent circumstances and took adjacent action for the same underlying reason, which is that when you know what you know, and it is enough to act on you, act. She had a feeling for longer than I had the message. She had been waiting for confirmation. I sent her confirmation. Thank you for telling me. That was enough. She did not need more from me. She knew what to do with what I sent her, and she did it with the specific competence of a person who had been thinking about the possibility for long enough that the execution did not require delay. I do not know Rebecca Caldwell. I hope Chapter 2 is good. I think she is probably very good at Chapter 2. The small brown dog in Iris's drawing is not about any of this. The small brown dog is about the first morning in the new apartment and the dog on the sidewalk below and Iris pressing her nose to the glass and reporting what she saw. But everything in this story was started by someone noticing something and deciding to say what they noticed. Rebecca Caldwell and I both noticed. Rebecca Caldwell and I both said, "The world is full of people noticing things and not saying them. Sometimes the not saying is kindness. Sometimes the not saying is cowardice. Sometimes the not saying is the specific self-protective logic of someone who does not want to know officially what they already know unofficially." I said what I noticed at a dinner table in Fremont on a Friday evening in spring. 6 words out loud, in front of 6 couples in a room that went quiet in layers. Rebecca Caldwell said what she noticed in an HR complaint and a moving truck and a caption on Instagram. Both of us said it. The saying mattered. That is the last thing I want to say about this. Part 22, Pickup at 3:30. I pick Iris up from daycare at 3:30 on the days she is with me, or early. She prefers early. I try for 3:15 when the routing analysis can wait. She comes through the door with the specific energy of a 5-year-old who has been managing social complexity for 6 hours and is now back in a context where she does not have to. She drops her backpack at my feet. She has been told this is not ideal. The backpack should go on its hook. This conversation will recur indefinitely, and she tells me about her day with the stream of consciousness narration of someone for whom everything that happened is equally important and should be reported in approximately the order it occurred. I listen to all of it. This is not difficult. It is the most interesting part of my day. We walk to the car. She gets buckled. She looks out the window as we drive and continues the narration. We go home to the apartment on Capitol Hill, the one with the purple walls and the succulent on the bookshelf and the drawings on the refrigerator. She runs through the door. She checks on the plant. She gets a snack. She does whatever she does on the floor of the living room with the toys and the books and the purple rug with the yellow border. Sir, I make dinner. She helps. Things get dropped. We eat at the kitchen counter. She tells me more about her day, the parts she forgot to tell me in the car. I ask questions. She answers some of them and deflects others with the specific 5-year-old technique of saying something entirely unrelated in a tone that implies it is the answer. Then bath. Then the rabbit. Then her books. Then her lights. I sit on the edge of her bed while she settles. The rabbit is arranged correctly. She is specific about this. The rabbit goes on the left side of the pillow, not the right. This is important. The purple walls in the lamplight are darker than they are in the morning. Daddy, she says the specific tone of someone with a question they have been saving. Yeah. Can we get a dog? We're in an apartment. Some apartments have dogs. I've seen them. We'd have to ask the building. Would you ask? I'll look into it. She accepts this as a commitment and settles back against the pillow. Good night, Daddy. Good night. I turn off the lamp. The room goes to the specific darkness of a child's room at night, not full dark, the streetlight through the curtain. Enough to see the bookshelf and the succulent and the rabbit arranged correctly on the left side of the pillow. I pull the door mostly closed. I go to the kitchen. I finish the routing analysis. I drink the rest of the coffee. I look at the drawing on the refrigerator, the building with the yellow window, the figure in it, the small brown dog in the corner. And I think about the first morning, and then I stop thinking about it because the first morning is over and the current morning is tomorrow, and it will be like most mornings what it is. I close the laptop. I turn off the kitchen light. I go to bed. This is the shape of things. This is what the after looks like. It is not what the before looked like, and it is not what I would have chosen if I had been the one choosing, but it is real, and it is mine. And there is a 5-year-old in a purple room with a rabbit on the correct side of the pillow who will wake up at 6:30 and be glad to be awake. That is the inventory. That is the whole of it. That is enough. Begin. Part 23. The things that are still true. There are things that are still true that I want to name because naming them correctly seems like the right way to end this. Diana is a good mother. She has Iris alternating weeks and she picks her up early because Iris prefers it. And she has, from what Iris reports and what I observe at handoffs, been present and careful and trying. She and I do not have long conversations. We have brief, efficient exchanges about Iris's schedule, her health, her school requirements. These exchanges are civil, and sometimes, when something has happened with Iris that is funny or interesting, briefly warm, we are, I think, going to be people who are able to be parents together without being able to be anything else to each other. This is the best available outcome for Iris. I am working toward it. The house in Eastlake is still standing. The back deck that looks toward the water on clear days is still there. The kitchen we renovated in year 4 is still the kitchen. I have driven past it once or twice without meaning to, not on purpose, just the geography of the city putting me on that route. It looks the same from the outside. The rhododendrons are still in the front bed. The conference where we met was 7 years ago. The methodology question I asked was about a variance adjustment in a supply chain model. She answered it and asked one back. Neither of us knew that the second question was the one that mattered. The analytics conference still happens every year. I have thought about whether I would go back, if I do, to the specific breakout session that had the wrong building. I probably would not. Some rooms are best visited once. Iris has never asked about what happened between Diana and me. She has asked about why we have 2 houses, and the answer she has received, that sometimes moms and dads live in different places, and that both places are home, has satisfied her in the way that direct, honest answers satisfy 5-year-olds who are not yet old enough to ask the next question. She will ask the next question eventually. I will answer it when she does. The brown dog in the drawing is real. I saw it on the first morning from the window of the Capitol Hill apartment on the sidewalk below. It was large and brown and moving in the specific, purposeful way of dogs who know where they are going. Iris saw it from the same window and reported it immediately, and with the specific joy of someone who finds dogs intrinsically interesting. I do not know whose dog it was. It appeared in the drawing 3 months after the first morning, from memory placed in the corner by a 5-year-old who had decided it belonged in the first morning picture. She was right. It did belong. It is on the refrigerator now in the center of the gallery, between a drawing of the succulent and a drawing of Carl with a paint roller that is twice his size. The magnets holding it up are the Seattle Mariners magnets my father brought from Bellevue. The Mariners did not have a good year. This did not prevent my father from bringing the magnets. Some loyalties are not performance dependent. I work from the home office most days. The routing analysis is on the screen. The coffee is on the counter. The apartment is doing its apartment things around me. The specific sounds of a building that is full of other people living their other lives. Iris is at daycare or at Diana's, depending on the week. Carl is available if I text him. The plant is alive. The rabbit is on the correct side of the pillow. This is what there is. This is what the after looks like when the after has been going on for 4 months and is starting slowly to become simply what things are rather than what things are after. I read 6 words out loud at a dinner table, and the room went quiet in layers, and nothing was the same when I finished. The room is different now. The table is different. The before is the before, and the after is the after, and both of them are mine, and both of them were real. The drawing is on the refrigerator. The door to Iris's room is mostly closed. The coffee is getting cold. Begin. Part 24. One more thing about Carl. Carl and I grew up in Bellevue, 2 years apart, in a house where my father worked logistics for a regional distributor, and my mother taught 3rd grade. And the specific household ethos was that you did what needed to be done without requiring the doing to be appreciated out loud. This is where I learned logistics, I think. Not from a textbook, from watching my father manage a distribution problem at the kitchen table on Saturday mornings, mapping the routes and the timing and the dependencies on a yellow legal pad before he reached for the phone. Precision as an act of care. Attention to the right details as a form of respect for the people who depended on the route being right. Carl learned a different version of the same thing. He runs construction projects, the specific discipline of coordinating materials and labor and weather and regulatory requirements into something that is built correctly and on time and within budget. He does this by showing up by knowing what his people need before they know they need it. and by the specific economy of speech that comes from spending years in environments where clarity matters and excess words waste time. I'll be there in 20, you eat yet, trucks outside. These sentences contain everything Carl needed to say. He said them, and then he showed up and carried boxes and ordered tacos and painted purple walls and comes on Sundays. This is what good people do, not the grand gesture, the sustained, specific, repeated showing up. I am trying to do the same for Iris, not in the moments that will make good stories, but in the daily pattern of picking her up at 3:15 when the routing analysis can wait, and answering her questions at the kitchen counter and saying, "I'll look into the dog question," and meaning it. And sitting on the edge of her bed until the rabbit is on the correct side of the pillow and the lights are off and the door is mostly closed. This is the logistics of being her father. It is also the most important work I do. Carl understood this before I articulated it. He came over in 18 minutes, not because he had a plan, but because showing up was the thing that was needed, and he knew what was needed without being told. I am trying to be that kind of person for Iris. I think I am getting there. The routing analysis is on the screen. The coffee is on the counter. The drawing is on the refrigerator. Iris wakes up at 6:30, and she is glad to be awake, and she tells me about it. That is the inventory. That is, as I keep saying, everything. Begin again every morning. The small brown dog is in the corner of the drawing going somewhere purposeful, and Iris drew it there because she remembered it from the first morning and thought it belonged in the picture. She was right. It does belong. We all go somewhere purposeful in the mornings. We all belong in the picture. I read 6 words out loud. The room went quiet in layers. Nothing was the same when I finished. Everything after was mine. Part 25, what the routing analysis is actually about. The routing analysis I was working on the night I found Diana's message is still a project I work on in different versions every week. That particular client, a regional grocery distributor in Western Washington, has been with the firm for 3 years and requires quarterly optimization updates because their supplier network shifts and the routes that were efficient 3 months ago are not always efficient now. I have thought about this often, the fact that a route can be correct and then become incorrect, not because of a failure, but because the landscape around it changed. The driver hasn't made an error, the warehouse hasn't changed. The route that worked in January has simply encountered a reality in April that it was not designed for. This is a logistics problem. It is also, as I have come to understand, a description of what happened to my marriage. The marriage was not always wrong. The marriage had years of being right, genuinely right. The specific rightness of 2 people who found each other at a conference and built something real over 7 years. What changed gradually and without announcement was the landscape around it. Diana's work expanded. My work expanded. The landscape of our daily life shifted in ways that the existing route, the assumptions and habits and ways of being together that had been established in the early years did not accommodate. The correct response to a route becoming inefficient is to reroute, to look at the changed landscape with honest eyes and redesign the path to account for what is actually there rather than what was there when you first mapped it. We did not reroute. I was preoccupied. Diana was preoccupied in a different direction. Neither of us looked at the changed landscape honestly enough to name what we were seeing and design a new route together. This is not a justification of what she did. It is an explanation of the conditions in which what she did became possible. The conditions and the choice are different things. She made a choice. I made choices too, the choice of preoccupation, the choice of not asking the question in December or January or February that might have changed what happened in March. What I have taken from this into the apartment on Capitol Hill, into the work of being Iris's father and rebuilding a life that fits what is actually there rather than what I thought would be there, is the routing lesson. Look at the landscape with honest eyes. Design the path for what is actually there. Accept that the correct route will need to be updated and update it when it does. The routing analysis is on the screen. The coffee is cold. Iris is in her room with the purple walls and the rabbit on the correct side of the pillow. This is the route I am on now. I designed it for this landscape. I will update it as the landscape changes, which it will, because it always does. This is logistics. This is also just living. Some things are both. I am glad for the overlap. Begin. The route continues. The small brown dog knows where it is going. We all go somewhere purposeful in the mornings. We all belong in the picture that is drawn from memory months later by a 5-year-old who remembers everything and puts what she remembers in the right corner. She was right. It belongs. So does the rest of it. All of it. The before and the after and everything between. The room went quiet in layers. Nothing was the same when I finished. Everything after was mine. Begin. The apartment on Capitol Hill on a Tuesday morning, routing analysis on the screen, cold coffee drawings on the refrigerator, rabbit on the correct side of the pillow, in a room with purple walls, Carl's number in my phone, Iris's pickup at 3:15 today because the routing analysis can wait, the small brown dog in the corner of the drawing, placed there by the person who draws what she remembers and puts it where it belongs. The room went quiet in layers. 6 words. Nothing was the same when I finished. What came after was hard and real, and mine and I would not change the decision, though I would have changed the conditions that made the decision necessary. I loved her the whole time, too. That did not change what became of what we had. The note was in the recycling bin, and the documentation was in the locked folder, and both were true, and both were mine, and I hold them both. Begin. Again. Every Tuesday. Every morning with coffee, and the routing analysis, and the pickup at 3:15, and the voice at 6:30 that is glad to be awake. Begin. Nathan Cole's routing optimization firm, 12 people, South Lake Union, will continue to run efficiently because efficiency is what it was built for. The apartment on Capitol Hill, 4th floor window facing Volunteer Park, will continue to be lived in because that is what apartments are for. And Iris has decided it is home. And Iris is right about most things. Carl will come on Sundays. The succulent will be watered on Tuesdays. The drawings will be rotated in the gallery as new ones are completed because the gallery is an active record of what Iris finds worth drawing. And the record will always be incomplete, which is correct because she is 5 and still finding out what the world contains. The routing analysis will be updated as the landscape changes. The coffee will be hot in the mornings. Iris will wake up at 6:30 and be glad to be awake. That is the inventory. That is the whole of it. That is enough and more than enough, and the beginning of everything that comes next. Begin. 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 The room went quiet in layers. It always does when the truth lands. The question is what you build in the quiet after. Nathan Cole built an apartment with purple walls and a bookshelf with a succulent and pickup at 3:15 when the routing analysis can wait. He built it from accurate materials. It holds. Begin.